Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Middle School Math Course 1, Unit 5, Ratios and Rates. Topic 1, Understanding Ratios and Writing Ratios, but also understanding rates. Now, let's learn about ratios. A ratio compares two quantities. When we say quantities, we mean amount. Amounts, okay? Quantities, amounts. So, a ratio compares two quantities. It tells us how much of one thing there is compared to another. Look at the picture. We have 3 red apples, 2 green apples. We're comparing the number of red apples to the number of green apples. Write the ratio. There are 3 red apples and 2 green apples. So we write the ratio 3:2. Remember, those 2 dots up and down means colon. All right, those 2 dots that are up and down, one on top of the other, means colon. So we read it as 3:2. This is how we read the ratio, 3:2. So that means 3 red apples for every 2 green apples. There are 3 red apples for every 2 green apples. All right. So let's remember, these are some key points. A ratio compares two quantities. We write the numbers in the same order you are comparing them. The ratio 3:2 is read 3:2. In this example, there are 3 red apples for every 2 green apples. Excellent job. Pause the video to do the activity below. So now let's look at another example. We see the first example that we've already went over, right? And there's a reason for that. Because with this image, we're looking at equivalent ratios. So equivalent ratios are different ratios that show the same relationship. So the numbers may be different, but they compare the two quantities, the two amounts in the same way. In other words, it's like a pattern. Okay, it's like a pattern. So look at the first example that we have already covered. 3 red apples, 2 green apples. So it's 3:2. Now look at the second example. Now there are 6 green apples for every 4 green apples. So the ratio is 6:4. Let's compare the two ratios. 3 times 2 equals 6. 2 times 2 equals 4. We multiplied both parts of the ratio by the same number, which was 2. Okay? That means the relationship stayed the same because they were both multiplied by 2. So that means 3:2 equals 6:4. So these are equivalent. So if we look deeper into this picture, it's like adding another row, right? It's like adding another row to each one. So instead of 3 apples on red side, we added 3 more apples to it and made it a second set. So instead of 3 apples, we had 2 rows of 3, which is 6. And on the green side, instead of 2 apples, we added another row to it, which made it a second row, which means now it's 4 green apples. So if we were to continue with this pattern, we would see the same relationship, right? If we added another row to the 6, we would make it 9. Think 3, 6, 9, and it keeps going. So with that, instead of 2 and instead of 4, if we had 9 red, we would have, let's say, 2, 4, 6. Good. We would have 6 green apples. And that would be equivalent as well. Excellent job. So if we simplified all of these ratios, they will simplify to the same exact amount. Why? Because for every 3 red apples we add 2 more green apples. For every 3 that we add from red, we're going to add 2 green apples. And it keeps going and going and going. So now let's learn why some ratios are called equivalent ratios. So equivalent ratios may have different numbers, but they compare the same relationship. You make an equivalent ratio by multiplying or dividing both numbers by the same number. Start with the original ratio. There are 2 red apples to every 3 green apples. So there are 2 red apples, 3 green apples. The ratio is 2 to 3. This means there are 2 red apples for every 3 green apples. Make an equivalent ratio. Let's multiply both numbers by 2. 2 times 2 gives us 4. 3 times 2 gives us 6. So the ratio at this point, now it's 4 to 6. So the numbers changed, but the relationship stayed the same because the same amount were added in that same ratio. So make another equivalent ratio. Now let's multiply both numbers by 3. So 2 times 3 equals 6, and 3 times 3 equals 9. So now the ratio is 6 to 9. Again, the relationship is still the same. Now let's compare all 3 ratios. We have 2 to 3, 4 to 6, 6 to 9. At this point, you should see a pattern. Okay? So all 3 ratios compare red apples to green apples in the same way. That means there are equivalent ratios. When we look at this part right here, we see a pattern. If you don't see the pattern, let me help you see the pattern. We see the pattern for red apples. It increased by 2 every single time. 2, 4, 6. And then we see the pattern of the green apples. They increase by 3 every single time. 3, 6, 9. Now you see the pattern? Excellent job. Now let's learn about rates. A rate is a special type of ratio. Again, a rate is a special type of ratio. A rate compares 2 quantities, 2 amounts with different units. 2 amounts with different units. Okay? Remember when we speak about units, we could be speaking about length, we could be speaking about meters, we could be speaking about miles, we could be speaking about hours, we could be speaking of minutes, seconds. It doesn't matter. Okay? So when we think about units, remember that there are different types of units, but for this part, that part don't matter because we are simply dealing with this slide. When we speak of units, we're dealing with hours and we're dealing with miles. Okay, so time and distance. So let's look at the example. A car travels 60 miles in 1 hour. The 2 units that we are using are miles for distance and hours for time. So since the units are different, this is called a rate. Since the units are different, this is called a rate. Write the rate. We write the rate as 60 miles per hour. The word per means for each. Anytime we see the word per, it means for each. 60 miles for each hour that is traveled. 60 miles per hour. Okay? So we read this as 60 miles per hour. That means the car travels 60 miles during every 1 hour of driving. See? 60 hours per hour. So let's remember, a rate compares two quantities, two amounts with different units. The word per means for each. 60 miles per hour means 60 miles are traveled in every hour. Common rates compare miles and hours, dollars and items, or words and minutes. Wonderful job, creative learning adventurers. You are doing an amazing job. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, family and friends. We will see you next time.